so forth. We just fly you from airport to airport to airport for 2-hour stints of book signing. We'll promote it for a month. I bet we could sell 1 million books in one day. And I said, whoa. And so things like that start to happen. Now, it's enough to have that impulse. That would have been a nice conversation, but we had to take action. There was a lot of action involved. Finding an airline partner, finding a hotel partner, getting all of our co-authors lined up so they'd be in all these different airports. But when you do it, it works if you just follow the impulses and then also follow the clues that are given to you day to day by people walking into your life, paying attention.
Principle 17 is ask, ask, ask. And you put a lot of attention on the importance of learning to be a fearless asker. Why is that? In fact, what is that and why is that important?
Well, things only happen in life and projects only move forward when you do one of three things. You either make an offer, you make a request, which is asking, or you take an action. For example, if you said to me, I'd like to offer you this ashtray to buy for $5, that might make something happen. Or if I were to say to you, I would like you to sell me your ashtray for $5, that could make something happen. Or I could just pick up your ashtray and walk out of the house with it. All three of those things are going to produce me having ashtray. The reality is most people are afraid to make offers because they're a fear of rejection. They're afraid to ask for things because of the fear of rejection, the fear of looking foolish, the fear of looking needy. And they're afraid to take action because they're afraid they don't know the right action to take and they don't want to look foolish. They don't want to have it not work. And so what I teach in my book, my seminars, our curriculum guide that we have for parents and teachers is the power of asking. And we do all these exercises. I'll give you just one we do. And this is one you can practice at home. You can practice in a group. You take a specific time frame. It might be a whole day. It could be an hour as an exercise that's part of your schooling. And you say, what I want you to do is to do some radical asking today. I want everyone to ask for 5 things you've always wanted but you never asked for. It doesn't mean you're going to get them, but it means you're going to overcome the fear of asking by practicing asking and discovering nothing bad happens. When I was in therapy years ago, I remember my therapist said, because I was real afraid to ask for anything. I was so shy and embarrassed. He said, I want you to go into a 7-Eleven store and then ask him where the nearest 7-Eleven store is. And so I went into the 7-Eleven store and I asked the guy where the nearest 7-Eleven store was, and he said, oh, you're in it. He didn't call me stupid. He didn't judge me. He didn't laugh. All the things that I was afraid of would happen if I asked a stupid question. And so one of the things we do in our big seminars, we'll get 100 people up, and they'll all be milling around for 25 minutes asking for all the things they want in life. And everybody has to give them a no answer until the 10th person says yes. And then so you count up 9 no's, and then you give a yes to someone. You count up 9 no's, you give a yes. And eventually, everyone in the group gets a yes. But what they also discover is they can survive the no's, and they begin to learn life is simply a numbers game. Ask, ask, ask. I'll give you one quick example. Chad Progracki, 19-year-old, never went to college. I write about him in my book, The Success Principles. He literally cleaned up the Mississippi River of all the trash that had been thrown in for years. How do you do it? He's sitting outside on the Mississippi River one day, and he sees all this stuff floating by, and he thinks it's really gross, and he says to his mom, I'm going to take the boat, clean up everything on the banks as far as I can see from our house. So he does that. Then he runs into a refrigerator, which he can't get in his boat because his boat's not big enough. He says, we need a barge. And so he says to his friend, where can we get a barge? And he said, well, we need money. He said, but we don't have money. We're working class people. He said, well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we go ask a corporation? He says, well, how do you ask a corporation? Where do you find corporations? He says, let's look in the yellow pages. So they open the yellow pages to corporations, and the first one's Alcoa. They call him up. The guy says, can I speak to the head guy? And the secretary says, you mean the CEO? He says, yeah, I guess that. What's a CEO? The chief executive officer. He says, well, does he run the place? She says, yeah. He says, let me talk to him. So he gets through to the secretary and tells him, his story. And she tells the CEO to give him $8,000. So now he's got $8,000. Well, he's really reinforced. So he says, okay, let's do some more. So they look in the phone book again. The next one's the Anheuser-Busch, the beer manufacturer. They call them. He said, can we talk to the CEO? Because he got pretty good fast learner. He knew CEO now. And he said, we'd like $25,000 to clean up the Mississippi River. We need to buy a barge. And the woman that was his assistant said, do you have a proposal? He said, what's a proposal? She explained it to him, and then she helped him write one. They got $25,000. To make a long story short, in 2 years, he raised $4.5 million, got 4,000 volunteers to give up their summer. They cleaned up the entire 1,250-mile length of the Mississippi River. If we can teach kids that kind of courage and that kind of skill, then we can do anything in the world.
I love that. You were talking about telling others about your goal.
Uh-huh.
I know in my own personal experience, sometimes people that we love the most and who love us can be dream killers.
Uh-huh.
Especially before you have a history of achieving your goals. I mean, how do you feel about that? I know for myself, I'm selective. I know there are some people I can tell my dreams to, and I know that they're going to support me and help me. And other people, I don't really confide in them too much because sometimes I don't want to be so afraid of rejection or being ridiculed that you don't take any action on your goal.
Yeah, I'd say three things on that. Number one, in the Bible it says don't cast pearls before swine. And I think what the Bible is really talking about is don't cast these beautiful ideas before people who are going to tromp on them. And the other thing is that you want to think of like a tomato. I used to live in Massachusetts. I live in California now. We have all year sunny weather, but up then we didn't in Massachusetts. And we would take our tomatoes and we'd plant them in this little greenhouse type thing we called a hothouse. And it would just be glass over on some bricks with the tomatoes on it, but the glass and the sun was enough to keep it warm in there so the tomatoes could get started before the snow melted. And a lot of times our dreams are like that. We need to protect them until they're strong enough to be outside in the weather by themselves. We need to pick friends that are going to support our dreams, that are going to be positive and encouraging. And if your friends are putting your dreams down, you need some new friends, and you need to stop hanging out with the old ones. And the third thing is, I'll tell you a story, because ultimately you want to become strong enough that nobody can put your dreams down. You have to kind of know when that is. But a friend of mine named Monty Roberts, that I write about in the book, he wanted to own his own horse ranch. He was a kid living out of the back of a truck. It was a camper van. They had no home. His dad was a trainer of horses. They go from stable to stable, county to county, farm to farm, ranch to ranch. He was never anywhere any more than 3 months at a time. And one day his teacher asked him to write a paper called What Do You Want to Be and Do When You Grow Up? So he got really excited. For 3 pages, he wrote about owning his own horse ranch. Longest thing he ever wrote. He drew diagrams of the horse ranch, the stables, his house, the whole deal. Handed it to him, real excited. Got it back a week later and said, F, see me after class. And he went to the teacher and he said, how come I got an F? He said, the reason you got an F is because this is an unrealistic dream for a young man like you. You have no capital. Your dad has no capital. You're living out of the back of the truck. You have no resources. You can't buy breeding stock. You don't have the assets to pay for stud fees, to pay for ranch hands, to buy land. He said, my job is to make sure you don't grow up and be disappointed. I want you to set a more realistic goal. He said, a more realistic goal, I'll give you a higher grade. So he goes home to his dad and he says, what should I do? And his dad says, I can't tell you. It's your job. You have to decide. But whatever you decide will probably affect the rest of your life. So a week later, after struggling with this decision, he went to the teacher and he said, I made a decision. You keep the F, I'm keeping my dream. I'm not rewriting the paper.
Oh.
And whenever I tell that story at a conference, like people go, like you do, they just go, and they clap and everything. And the reason we do that is because we know deep down in our hearts that's the right choice. Never let anyone tell us what we can't do. A friend of mine wrote a book called What You Think of Me Is None of My Business. And I would translate, what you think of my dreams is none of my business. What I think of them. So never let anybody tell you can't do anything. And if you're a parent of a child and you're telling them anything they can't do, or you can never sing, you don't have a great voice, you'll never make it to American Idol, you don't have the brains to become a physicist, you can't become an astronaut, blah, blah, blah. That's the worst thing you can do. Encourage them.
The trick on those big dreams is just to break them down into little bite-sized pieces.
Absolutely. I would say, I see you being an astronaut. I can see that. Well, right now I can see you in the capsule and it's taking off and everything's shaking and you're going up there and blah, 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 and get them real excited and join their dream. Then I would say, so if you're going to be an astronaut, what do you have to do to be an astronaut? Do you know? They go, well, no. Well, one thing is you have to be good in math because you have a lot of calculating to do. You got to be in shape. Are you in shape? Maybe we ought to start an exercise program. And then we break it down into little things they can start doing right now, just as you said, and we get them moving. And if they've never even become an astronaut, at least they got in shape, learned math, and got closer to their goal.
And they've learned that it's okay to set big goals and then break them down.
Absolutely.
And I like what you said, too, about getting to yes. We interviewed Robert Kiyosaki last summer, and one of the things he said was, who said you get to win all the time? Like you said, success is a numbers game.
Right.
And, Robert says out of 10 transactions, he assumes that probably 2, maybe even 3 of them are not going to work out. And, that's okay because 7 or 8 of them are.
Yeah, there's something called the law of probabilities, which I teach, which is what Kiyosaki's talking about, which is the more things you try, the more likely one of them will work.
Yeah.
And the more books you read, the more likely one of them will affect you. Not every book's going to have a life-changing impact on you, but if you don't read, the opportunity for one of them to happen is not going to happen. And when we publish...
It's tougher if it's your first goal that doesn't necessarily succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And I like what you say, too, about there's no failure, there's just feedback.
Well,
I think that's such a powerful way of approaching life. Ooh, I didn't get the results that I wanted or expected here. What happened?
Yeah, what happened? What did I learn? What can I do different next time? When we went to sell chicken soup for the soul, Rebecca, we had in our mind, we talked to 8 publishers like Random House, Simon & Schuster,